Welcome to the Expert Cruise Show. I'm Chris, he's Anthony, and we have got so much listener and viewer feedback that we thought we'd dedicate an entire show to talking about what you have said to us over the last 3 months.
And I mean, it's not all good, so, you know,
No.
this is not a self-congratulatory session. There was one actually, because, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we kind of did an episode about climate change and talking about the effect of pollution on the, you know, on the ocean. And I actually, part of the reason why I wanted us to do like a feedback, conversation is because Simon B wrote and said, "Dear Chris and Anthony, very topical and brave to raise the issue of climate change at the start of this episode. Shame there are still so many deniers." And it kind of occurred to me, because, you know, you forget, you know, especially on YouTube with an international audience, that politics really has got in the way of climate change in some countries, not all, one country particularly. And it is the case that people still don't believe that humans have any effect on climate change. And the fact that we're even having to have that conversation is really embarrassing in a way, because there is, you know, the science is absolutely clear. It's not like there's any question. The consensus is there. And so that's why I think that there doesn't require any bravery on my part to want to talk about climate change and cruising.
And you know what I found quite interesting? I did recently a video, not an Expert Cruise Show video, but just a video about the Tasmanian company Incat, who had built a battery-powered ferry, the largest battery-powered ferry in the world. And this ferry was designed for a specific route. So to get from Australia to South America, where it was going to operate, it had to go on a ship-carrying ship. And that ship-carrying ship was a diesel ship. So you can imagine what this did in the comments of this video.
Yes.
There's quite a lot of, you know, anger around the idea that you would even suggest that climate change, or, you know, global warming as it used to be called, is real. And I don't think that by putting your head in the sand and hoping for the best is really a very viable solution.
The one that I like the most is the people that get upset because their cruise or their river cruise has been interrupted by, you know, extreme weather or low tides or whatever it is, and then they kind of complain to the cruise line, "This is not what I paid for." And as I've said a few times on this show now, is that this is what we are all having to get used to, and this is why I said you have to build extra time into your transit and stuff like this. So the world is changing, and it's going to be interesting to see how the cruise industry adapts to that change. Yeah.
That episode actually as well generated a few other comments, because we, like usual on this show, we kind of move from topic to topic, so it wasn't just about river cruising, obviously. And GSSFTL, I don't even know how to pronounce that, I apologise. Gistaful. Made a comment in relation to your reference to being on all 4 Cunard, Queen, Maiden transatlantic crossings.
Yes.
And they said, "Every time I hear Anthony refer to having been on the Maiden Voyage of QM2, I'm reminded of Cunard's having marketed multiple maiden voyages for the ship. She can only have one maiden voyage, the first revenue voyage, which in QM2's case was a crossing of the Atlantic from Southampton to Fort Lauderdale."
Yeah, so in recent years, Cunard and other lines, a traditional crossing, as we know, would be from Europe to the Americas, normally from Southampton to New York, certainly on Cunard, on its liners in history. My earliest crossing was on the QE2. I did both directions in one hit, and it's very much in my DNA. But because you and I are also like Titanic enthusiasts and purists, to me a crossing is the maiden voyage, especially if you're on Cunard, especially if you're on an ocean liner. And I had friends that went on that kind of January crossing that wasn't really a crossing because it was on the South Atlantic. It wasn't on the North Atlantic. So the South Atlantic, which, takes in the Azores sometimes, or Tenerife, or, and ends up in Florida, that is not a transatlantic crossing in the traditional sense. And the South Atlantic is very different to the North Atlantic, two almost completely different oceans in many ways. You don't get the swells, you don't get the drama, and it's not where Titanic sailed either. So to me, and I always refer to being on the maiden transatlantic crossing, and occasionally I guess I might abbreviate it to the Maiden Voyage, but for those of us who are transatlantic purists, a Maiden Crossing is really the Maiden Voyage. And so and then the other lesson is, of course, that, in a way it is quite good that Cunard did a kind of South Atlantic on Queen Mary 2, because that's the shakedown cruise. And I don't know that you ever really want to be on shakedown cruises. I watch a lot of creators who go on these maiden cruises that turn out to be a disaster because the ship is too new and they haven't ironed out all the creases. And so so Queen Mary 2 went in January 2004, but in April 2004, which of course, April being the same time of year that Titanic sailed, was the right time to cross the North Atlantic for the very first time. And the flotilla, as we arrived into New York, I mean, it was, photographed and filmed from the TV news cameras, but also from the helicopters. There is a photograph of us coming in. I was standing on the observation deck, up on, deck 11, I think, out front on that front balcony. It felt iconic. It felt historic. And so I'm very proud to have been on it. And yes, then I did the maiden transatlantic crossings of Queen Victoria, Queen Elizabeth, and then Queen Anne in January 2025. So to me, they're maiden voyages. Does that answer the question without being a little too gauche? I hope that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it certainly shares your perspective. I mean, like on all of the documentation in terms of the ship's record, that first voyage with passengers on board would be considered the maiden voyage, but it wouldn't be considered the maiden express service.
All the people that were on board these crossings, they all felt that they were on the Maiden Crossing for the right reasons. So a lot of purists on board. And I'm sure I told you this, but they printed the daily program in 2004 and it said cruising the Atlantic, and we all complained to the purser's office and they reprinted it with crossing the Atlantic. So,
that's so good. Yeah.
It was, and even Commodore Warwick, he got up on the mic in the Queen's room and he said, this is the maiden transatlantic crossing of the Queen Mary 2, and everybody just went nuts for it. It was such a special moment.
Yeah. I mean, people often wonder why, if you weren't there at the time. I mean, the weirdest thing about being here now and talking about these things that happened in 2004 is that there's actually a whole portion of our audience who weren't even born in 2004. So, this is kind of stuff that people might look back on and go why on earth would they send Queen Mary 2 from Southampton, which was, of course, Cunard's home port, and QM2's home port, to Fort Lauderdale. And the main reason is that Carnival Corporation had acquired Cunard back in 1998, and Carnival was heavily involved in the creation of QM2, and Cunard was headquartered in Miami at the time. So Florida was much more involved in Cunard in that period of time than it was ever in the past or has been since. And so, they brought Queen Mary to Florida. Then she did a series of cruises in the Americas, and it was April when, as you refer to, of course, that she did that voyage up to New York. And then actually, she was not made flagship of Cunard until she crossed the Atlantic in tandem with QE2 and arrived in Southampton. And then once the two ships were in Southampton together, they said, okay, QM2 now has done the first express service. QE2 can go off and into the sunset and do cruising for the rest of her career, and QM2 now becomes the flagship. So it was actually, Cunard's PR people were very savvy with the introduction of QM2. All these firsts: world's biggest passenger ship at the time, world's biggest ocean liner, most expensive ship ever built, longest, tallest, widest, all that sort of stuff. Then she goes and starts her career doing some cruises, building up the PR, anticipation, arrives into New York, meets the equally, if not more famous, sister ship, and then the two ships sail across the Atlantic together. I mean, how wonderful is that?
I cannot explain. I mean, I do actually have a video diary of that, which I think I've shown you, and it was we were ecstatic. I mean, the whole experience. Considering that, that a liner hadn't been built since 1969, so it was very much the case that this was a historic moment, and everybody was feeling it. And of course, Cunard laid on, back then they were a little more generous with stuff, so they laid on so much extra entertainment and references to this Maiden Crossing. So yeah, it was pretty special. And of course, there's been so many books and not movies, but like documentaries made about that crossing. So it is kind of recorded in history, showing that moment that she first arrived in New York Harbor. So in answer to Gsvifi's question, I hope that answers it thoroughly for you, is that the purists amongst us will only ever see the transatlantic through the North Atlantic as the Maiden Crossing, the Maiden Voyage, despite the South Atlantic shakedown cruise. Okay.
We also, just before we finish on that particular episode, we started, as usual, I ended up talking about the QE2. Yeah. And actually, today, when we're recording this, which will be a few days in the past for those of you who are watching, I'm about to embark on a virtual QE2 cruise on my Substack, because it is my 18th anniversary, not just as a published author, but also as a Cunard Insight speaker. Wow. So I thought, let's recreate. I've got diaries and programs and menus and photographs of that first ever lecture voyage when I was I was the youngest ever lecturer to ever speak on QE2. Still
the tallest, though.
Always the tallest. But yes, I'm doing this little virtual cruise, so hopefully people will jump over there and have a look at that. But Stephen Payne, designer of Queen Mary 2, left us a message relating to QE2 and whether or not we should visit in Dubai. And he said, I agree with you, Chris. Going back to QE2 will surely evoke mixed emotions as so much has changed. However, the real gem is SS Rotterdam in Rotterdam, and you and Anthony must surely visit soon. She is simply stunning. Well, I would love to.
Yes, because of course, since you mentioned Rich and Helen and the fact that they made a video about 5 years ago, I think they went down to Dubai and filmed on board, and I watched that, and actually was really the first time that I'd seen like really good high quality footage of what it looks like now. And so I've since watched a few people's videos, and it actually does look fantastic in some places, and completely different in others. So I think Dr. Payne is right, that if you have memories of it nostalgically for how it was, you might not want to go and kind of upset those memories with the changes that have been made.
Our most popular episode of the Expert Cruise Show so far was from a few months back, when we talked about the influence that vloggers have on cruise line marketing and promoting passenger ships.
Yes.
And it's titled, Steve Marsh did more for QM2 than Cunard's own marketing. Here's why, because it talks about how he's able to give like an authentic experience that no marketing department can possibly offer because of its original authenticity.
Yes.
And we actually got a reply back from Steve. He said, thanks so much, Chris, mate, hyped. So he gave us a hype. But what I find interesting, Anthony, is that this video has had 262 comments, 35 replies just on Steve's message, and he got 585 likes for his comments. A lot of love for Steve, even on this channel.
Yeah. I've actually gone back and started rewatching all of Steve's Queen Mary 2 escapades. He did a week. He actually did a kind of an eight and a half day crossing, because he was lucky enough to get on one of the crossings that went to Hamburg first, and then no, it wasn't Hamburg, was it? No, it was Le Havre. Went to Le Havre first, and then kind of crossed the Atlantic. And I just loved that. In fact, when I was on Queen Mary 2 a few months after he was on it, I went and paid a kind of pilgrimage to his cabin 4001 that was right at the front of deck 4. I took a picture there. I mean, I was so starstruck about the whole thing. You, of course, got to meet him, because when he went back on Queen Mary 2 for the 51 night kind of portion of the world cruise, they went to New Zealand and then back again, and you kind of jumped on then, didn't you, and gave a lecture and shook his hand, and the rest of us were very jealous.
Well, he came to I did 3 talks on that trip. He came to all of them, and as I've said before, he came to the book signing afterwards. And having been a fan of his channel for quite some time, and obviously I was listening to you talk about it for so long, I was like, oh my gosh, Steve, like, so good for you to come. And he's like, no, I'm here because you were the star. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So it was lovely. He's so modest, and it's just wonderful. We had Cooking Around the World saying, you make a very valid point in terms of the travel industry marketing. Steve Marsh is the reality of travel, standing in a queue, eating a meal, windy decks on a cruise, and sleep deprivation due to delays.
Yeah, it's interesting how things have changed. When we've spoken about this before, the days of watching the holiday program on the BBC, which I used to love, but it's still fake. It's just fake. And I don't have any time for inauthentic television now, so I don't really watch drama or any of those things. I like to watch real people doing real things, and to me that it's much more fun. And I don't know, I just feel like the fact that you can live by proxy, if you don't have the money to travel around the world. I watch these videos of people with a little steady cam, and they just walk around cities. And which city do I want to go to today? I want to see Rome. I can see a video from literally a week earlier. There's always one which is filmed in 4K, and if your TV is big enough, you can literally travel around the world without leaving your armchair. And I do think that is a gift for us, and it's also great from a climate perspective, because of course we're not burning air miles to get there.
Cruise lines should thank Emma Cruises for bringing them young passengers, our 50,000 subscriber special episode. And we got a message from Emma. I just opened my YouTube and bam, this was right on the front page. How kind of you both. Appreciate you always. I'm downloading this video so I can watch it on the plane, which made me think, just remember to everybody that you can actually listen to us on Spotify and other places. But we had a number of people sending in messages to say congratulations, including one here that has actually met you. Yeah. Good morning, Anthony and Chris. I'm literally just back from my Alaska sailing on the Summit, and I do agree with Anthony. She is a lovely ship, although I think I did prefer my time on NCL Spirit. Now, next sailing could be on Celebrity Infinity, but I do feel what's being said. She won't be upgraded, but I do wonder if Marella might have their eye on her now. Their new builds are now no longer happening.
Yes, well, remember the top tip with the Millennium class ships is anything aft of guest services on deck 3 is going to be one of those huge former public room windows, floor to ceiling, and yes, as good as a balcony.
Exactly.
Run, Travel, Sleep, Repeat wrote, I was on the same sailing as Anthony, but in a Deck 10 veranda. The Summit is an absolutely gorgeous ship. I love the Millennium class a lot more than the Edge class. The infinite verandas on Edge class are an absolute joke. I love veranda rooms for the outdoor space and spend most port days out there in the sun reading. On Edge class ships, I have to pay an extra $2,000 or so for a sunset veranda, which is a normal balcony room. As a solo cruiser, that's a lot for me to spend. I'm sticking with Millennium and Solstice class ships from now on. Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it, how that infinite veranda, maybe it's just the marketing of it. Maybe they just shouldn't have called it that, because it is just a big window that drops down very slowly and noisily, and it's not really like being outside. And I was thinking this about, cruising generally. If you're a little bit claustrophobic, even if you're on, say, a transatlantic when you're not going to use the balcony much, just to be able to open the door and get some fresh air, because as Steve Marsh showed, a lot of the time, the public decks were closed because it was too windy, but they don't stop you from going out on your own sheltered balcony, for example.
Yeah.
So, the fresh air is very necessary. But look, the Summit and the Millennium are the two refurbished Millennium class ships. The Infinity and the Constellation are the ones that are not refurbished.
We actually had to I had to re-upload a video that we had done right back when the show started about what we were observing as a decline of the quality of food on board cruise ships. This is because when I was making some playlist alterations, I accidentally deleted this video, and I thought, well, we can't have an actual episode missing in the back catalogue. So it's not been re-uploaded onto Spotify and Apple Music, podcast rather, but it is like an out of sequence one here on the channel. But people really, really liked re-listening to it.
Yes.
And Lana Carter said, my problem with cruise ship food is it tastes like 1982, full of oil and sodium. And in 2026, where there are literally thousands of vegetarian and vegan recipes online, cruise ship chefs can't find one. You inevitably get a mix of whatever vegetables are left over, thrown on puff pastry without enough protein to keep a mouse alive. Blah. You know what? I have to agree. In many cases, that is exactly what I have observed myself.
Yeah. Too much cruise food is... I mean, this is how, I'm amazed that people who do world voyages or even 51 nights, I mean, after a while, you start to recognize the same menus that kind of roll over again, because they tend to only have a week's worth of menus on cruise ships before they rotate. And so... it is, I don't know, I just find that sometimes if I'm on a cruise that is longer than 7 days, I start to feel like, I'm a bit done with cruise food. And, I will then kind of change my diet. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because it's like, it is one of the great reasons why people like a cruise, because the abundance of food, and it's all so fun, and you don't have to cook, and you don't have to clean up after yourself, and it feels quite luxurious, and you get served if you go to the dining room and all that stuff. But, some cruises, when I was on the NCL Jade, for example, I think I just mainly stuck to the buffet.
Oddly enough, on my last QM2 lecture trip, I came back 2 kilograms lighter than when I left, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I was traveling with my brother-in-law, who's super into fitness, and we were walking the decks and going to the gym and
trying to find the laundry room as well.
A hilarious laundry tour. Yes, that was so good.
Yeah.
Maybe it was also just the excitement of being upgraded that just made me... I couldn't eat with the excitement.
Your authentic reaction to the upgrade was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. And, I hope that Cunard treasure the face that you pulled when you realised that you were suddenly in a beautiful balcony cabin, as opposed to being in an entertainer's cabin, because I think that's a very special thing.
Actually, of course, we know as entertainers that we're going to be accommodated in the entertainers' cabins, and I'm not one to like they are of a perfectly serviceable quality, but it's just to get that balcony on that voyage from Auckland to Sydney for me has a very strange level of nostalgia attached to it, because my first ever QE2 cruise when I was a kid back in the 90s was Auckland to Sydney. So every time I'm doing the Trans-Tasman, whether it's on QM2 or Queen Victoria or on the Pacific Explorer, there's just so much emotion attached to it for being the voyage, the actual route. It's like my transatlantic, like the actual route that that started this whole thing. And so for that to then get the balcony and to be able to sit out there and watch the ocean and think like, this is where all those years ago as a young kid, this is where I thought I want to do this one day. Right. It was just very special.
That's so cute. Jay Lawrence says the mast grill is the worst poolside grill in cruising. I've talked to the employees, and it's pretty evident that they are nearly all new employees who lack prior training. The cardinal sin is cooking the hamburgers and French fries in advance and holding them in a warming pan. The most successful poolside grill is on Holland America's dive-in grill, which starts off with better quality meat, and all orders are made to order. Yeah, well, I've heard that about Holland America, is that people love that grill, but I would also agree the Mast Grill, which is a kind of Celebrity Cruises brand or product, which is on, I think, pretty much all of the ships. They have a Mast Grill, and I don't think I've ever had a decent cheeseburger or hot dog from these places, and the way it's done and the service and the mess, it's just not a very nice experience.
I was on edge, and I think the tip that I have is go when it's busy, because there's such a huge turnover of food that it's always fresh. If you go when it's quieter, it's literally going to be... You remember McDonald's back in the 1990s, and it would all sit in those... Like they'd make it, and it would all be lined up, and it'd just get and gross.
No, thank you.
Yeah, you can't do it. No, not at all. But the other one, just oddly enough, is I've recently been on board Carnival Encounter, and they have a new one, the Carnival Topside Grill. And whilst you do have to pay, it's an added extra because you're ordering it cooked to order. When we ate there, it was very fresh, and I thought that's a pretty decent top deck grill burger.
That several people have all identified that the Mast Grill is not very good, which is a shame because food on Celebrity is generally excellent, very high quality, and I just find it amusing that they haven't really put the energy or the effort into doing something as good as, say, Guy's Burgers, which is on Carnival, or the dive-in on Holland America.
We're actually getting closer and closer to our destination port, Anthony. So can we do some quick fire round ones, do you think?
Go ahead.
We had a few people who've met both you and myself. We had June Papadopoulos send a message in saying congratulations for the 50,000 subscriber milestone, which is very nice of June. Thank you so much. And Jenny Schmal said, I heard you speak on Queen Anne, and this channel is superb. You both bring valuable insights with real-time information. So that's very kind of Jenny.
And here's one from Chris Witchell, who just got off Queen Mary 2. In fact, he was messaging me on Instagram throughout his voyage, and he said, now that we're back home in Los Angeles from our crossing on QM2, the trip is only more epic in our memory banks. Every single person in our group of 21 was just gobsmacked by the ship and the whole 7-night experience. This past weekend, we drove to Northern California to celebrate the 95th birthday of Debbie's mum, and our entire drive home yesterday was spent listening to the Expert Cruise Show podcasts and reliving everything QM2 and Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth and Queen Anne through the captivating Davis frame commentary. They said, we literally can't wait for our 26th of May post-refit 12-nighter on Queen Mary 2. We're also purchasing copies of Chris's The QM2 Story for each of our travelling companions as a memento of last month's amazing trip. And one of these days we look forward to encountering you both on board QM2 or even on the Queen Mary in Long Beach. How cute is that?
Oh, so nice. That's literally made our day.
yeah. Well, certainly it has, because there's bought 12 copies of your book. And
not for that. It's just the kindness of the feedback, and to think of them listening to us talking about ships on their drive. Yeah. I mean, if that's not the reason why we're doing this, then what are we here for?
100%. And finally, a message here from Gardening Ladybug, who said, Chris, when will you be lecturing on board in 2027? Can't find you on the Cunard website anymore.
Well, I actually don't know if I'm going to be lecturing on board in 2027, so I haven't yet got any engagements. So my last confirmed engagement with Cunard at the moment is the 450th QM2 crossing in November, where I will be sharing the stage with Dr. Stephen Payne. So I'm very, very excited with that one. And I mean, only one ship's coming to my part of the world in 2027. That's Queen Victoria. I have requested voyages on board, but I'm not yet confirmed to or booked to do any of those. And as for the rest of the fleet, I'm just still waiting to hear back from Cunard. So, presumably we'll get offers at some point, and then I'll be able to share that.
Well, people need to write to Cunard and tell them that they want you on board, because the number of people that write to us and say that they've booked Cunard voyages because of the Expert Cruise Show is growing all the time. If we were on commission, we would be very happy. So, it's a two-way street, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, we do. We get a lot of. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm self-promoting here. That's absolutely not what I mean to do. But like the feedback after the presentations, not just from me, but when Stephen speaks, when Bill Miller speaks, talking on the Cunard ships, particularly QM2, about the history of this unusual company that has somehow managed to make it through the development of passenger transportation using propulsion motors and steam through World War I, through World War II, through the jet age, through the cruising boom, through a Carnival acquisition, and to have independent people getting up onto the stage and explaining to people why what you're doing by being on QM2 and the rest of the Cunard fleet is actually part of a historic story. I don't think, because I've got a qualification in PR and marketing. I would have Bill on board every trip if I could, or Stephen on board every trip if I could.
Or you on board every trip, yeah.
Well, naturally. But, the point is that we do it because we love it, and we do get lots and lots and lots of positive feedback. It's funny, Anthony, and I think you're the same, because both you and I have a background in marketing, public relations. We both know very well how to do it. But I think trying to promote yourself is extremely difficult, and I struggle with it too. So, I haven't done a feedback reel for Cunard because I felt that the feedback gets trickled through and it's not enough for them. So I've never thought that. But if passengers don't let them know, they won't know that these are the speakers that you want to have on board.
Yeah, I think the problem, not just with Cunard, but with most lines, is that what happens on the ship stays on the ship. And the people that operate the cruise line who are on land, they don't really kind of get that crossover. And so invariably what happens on the ship kind of happens in isolation. And you really have to make the effort to communicate how much fun people are having and how great the feedback is to get that back to land where the bookings are made.
Yeah. If you enjoyed the talks, or if you would like to see Anthony and myself doing a co-presentation on board, just let them know. It can't do any harm. Same with if you've traveled on Celebrity. I mean, I've been on board Celebrity as a guest speaker as well, P&O cruises as well. The feedback is so important because we can tell them stuff. The entertainment directors can tell them stuff, but unless they're getting that real strong feedback, how are they going to know?
It's not that this is kind of profit driven. This is very much about wanting to spread the good word of Cunard or whichever line it is, and do justice to the subject and the topic, which is ocean travel and expert cruising. And there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot of speakers out there, but there's not that many experts. In a future episode, we'll go into a bit more detail about the logistics of being a guest speaker and how it. How you do actually plan for it, both physically, logistically, financially, because it is a commitment. But as you say, I've never seen anyone pack the houses like you do. And when you see illuminations or similar, or the Royal Court Theatre just absolutely rammed with people who are transfixed by your Cunard story, it is a sight to behold. It's like the perfect kind of fusion of being on the ship. It's a bit like Inception, isn't it? It's like a dream within a dream. It's like the right person on the stage on the right ship talking about the right subject with the right audience, and that's like a perfect storm, if you'd pardon the expression.
And all the while, in the back of my head, there's that 11-year-old kid saying, "How is this possible?"
Yeah, I understand.
It's so much fun. But as you say, offline, you reminded me that the stage is not necessarily where you want to look for your most joy. And I think, having these conversations with you, somebody who I met online but has become a real true friend, that is literally a highlight of every well, we talk all the time, but the show is a highlight of every 2 weeks. And I very much appreciate it. So thank you for everything you've done as well.
And likewise. If you want to check out the back catalogue of the Expert Cruise Show, get to it. There's 50 episodes or more now, so definitely worth getting into. Download them to take them with you, so you don't have to kind of pay for Wi-Fi when you're cruising. It's a great companion to your travels. And we'll come back next time with another episode of the Expert Cruise Show. Check out the Substack, The Maritime Historian, and don't forget that Chris is doing that how would you describe it, like a retelling of your first Cunard trip?
It's like a virtual cruise, but from 18 years ago. So
fantastic. I'll be there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Okay. We'll link to that down below as well, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Da 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 da.